This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Hello, I'm Doug Musio. This is City Talk. The Fishman effect spurs a labor turnaround, trumpeted Crane's New York. He's one of New York Observer's Power 100. He's a star in the firmament of organized labor, says New York Magazine. His disarming style and political clout make him and his union, Local 32BJ, key players in New York politics. He's a trained carpenter, a union leader who takes care of his members. Mike Fishman is president of 32BJ of the Service Employees International Union, and he leads the city and state's largest private sector union with more than 120,000 workers in 8 states. A union leader for more than 30 years, Mike became president of 32BJ in 1999 and has been reelected 4 times. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Doug.
Okay, let's talk about the Fishman effect. What is it, and who the hell is Mike Fishman?
I don't know what the Fishman effect is.
Okay, Crane's Magazine says that your disarming style and campaign clout. What is it about your disarming style? Talk about how you approach politics in New York.
I would say, let's talk about employer relations and politics. You know, I would say what they're really talking about is my view of how to deal with employers and with politicians and with our own members, which is to be honest and straightforward, not make it personal, but to get to the core of what our agreement is and what our disagreement is. You know, the way I look at things, we're all part of the same city. We all want the same thing. We want a city to succeed, but we have different interests that we represent. But we want the city to succeed, and that means that working people have to succeed, and that means we have to have a conversation about it. And I look for the areas of agreement.
And yeah, I mean, it makes it a positive-sum game. You have very good relations with people you might not expect that a labor union would have good relationships with. The partnership, the Citizens Budget Commission, you write op-eds. The mayor, you sit down and have rational discourse with the mayor. Why not other union leaders the same sort of style? Or does that style allow you to do things that other leaders might not be able to do?
Whether it works for other people or not, it works for me.
It works for you.
Yeah, and that's what really counts, and it works for our members. We're part of the fabric of the city. Our members work in every building. They guard the airports. They're in people's homes. And for us, that means, especially, you know the doormen in New York, they have a relationship with everybody.
One of my best friends is a doorman.
I'm
you
really,
represent them.
Yeah, and I'm just representing them. And truthfully, if you know a doorman, you know, they get along with the people in the building. And they have a conversation, and they find the areas of agreement. Mm-hmm. I do the same. And I'd say my style reflects the character of our members. We have things we have to fight about, we have things we disagree about, but we're all human beings, and we've got to find a way to agree.
Yeah, even though there's an ideology, a progressive ideology, if you will, it's a lot of the conversation is non-ideological,
yeah.
which I found very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we believe that the city should be a place that working people should be able to live, be able to afford to live here, should have good services. The city should be working for working people. But it's also a place that has to work for business and has to work for the financial community, because that's what makes the city work. And it has to work for new immigrants. And we should all be saying, what's our way to work together? That's what will make the city great. And we're moving in that direction.
Several weeks ago, you invited me and others to a dinner to have one of these conversations with people of widely diverse backgrounds, from David Jones of the Community Service Society to Kathy, myself, etc. And it was part of that discussion. And in fact, this show is a blatant quid pro quo for that meal. And hopefully I get him back.
Where was my meal?
Right, get invited back for another one. Talk about the clout of 32BJ. What does it represent politically in this sub-headline that they have in Crane's?
Yeah. Well, I think we think politics is very important to our members. 70% of our members are immigrants. They come to this country, they're looking for a new life, and part of the new life in this country is being part of the democratic process. And so for our members, being part of the political life of the city is critically important, not just for what they can achieve, but for how they participate. So we make it important. And I would say what we bring to the table is the power of the 70,000 members we have in this city, that they are willing to go out and work for politicians, they're willing to go out and work for legislation, they're willing to go out in the communities and help to build the communities and make them thrive, and that's what we bring to the table.
Okay, you come to 32BJ in 1999. The union at that time, I remember it, it was moribund. There was certainly the taint of corruption and more. It was high living. The union was hemorrhaging members, and it was basically a nullity in New York City politics. Talk about what you saw when you came in and what your approach was. How did you build organizationally?
So we started with 43,000 members. I would say the base of the union, the members themselves, are a great organization, great members, great people, with great stories. I mean, I'm the son of an immigrant. My father came here in 1924. He came with the story that every one of our members comes with, horrible conditions in their home country. His father was killed. Our members come here with those same stories.
Sure.
And so coming back to New York, when my family all comes from New York in 1999, it was a great union base. The members believe in the union. The members are good people. But I walked into the building and there was no organizing department, no political department, no research department, no communications department. It was not functioning the way an organization that wants to represent people should function. And we built all that. We put that together. And we mobilized the members. Most importantly, members got involved in the union. And they're involved every step of the way. When we do politics, the members interview the candidates. They decide, what should we do? Let's think about it. Let's see who will do what's right for
Real
working
democracy in some sense.
people. Yes, absolutely. We see that as a critical element of making the union work.
So there's both the economic elements of being a union member, but you're really doing socialization and empowering on a number of dimensions.
Well, the only way that unions are going to be effective in this country, and as you know, and we've had this conversation, unions have not done as well in the last few years as they did 40 years ago, is to build the union to what it should be, a voice for working people. Not just the ones who are in the union, but the ones who are not in the union yet. And those are the people we should be talking for and with.
Okay, who do you represent exactly? We
represent-
talked about 120 members and 1,000 members in 8 states. Who are your members? What's your base?
Well, when you get up in the morning, if you live in a doorman building, everybody in that
Are
building...
you kidding me? A doorman building? I wish. No. Okay.
Well, we'll have
But
to work on that.
hypothetically.
Yeah, doormen, cleaners, porters in the apartment buildings, the cleaners in the commercial buildings and institutions like this, security officers in the city.
Important stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. People who are taking care of the people of the city, taking care of the tenants, and taking care of the buildings, guarding the city, keeping it safe.
Now, who do they work for? Who are your opposites when you negotiate contracts, for example? You're negotiating contracts right now for your security officers.
Yeah.
Okay, who are your opposites in these various negotiations?
Well, it can range from the contractors who employ them to the condo owners, literally the owners themselves. When we negotiate with a condo building or a co-op building, that's just a set of tenants in a building with a president. They may have an association that sits at the table, or they may sit there themselves, the president. And we deal with the real estate industry through the Realty Advisory Board on Labor Relations, which is their collective bargaining office.
Let's talk about that industry. What is that industry? And it seems like a very different industry than when I was growing up. Talk about what the industry is, what it was, and what it's becoming.
Yeah, I mean, I think the industry in New York, particularly 20, 30, 40 years ago, very much a family industry. Real estate, it's the most valuable real estate in the world, owned by families who've been here for generations, who had
Who are legendary, their names are legendary.
Yeah, the Rudins, the Spires, people who care about the city. And have,
Right,
and
and
have
had
really
a
worked to
vested
make it
interest.
go.
They
Yes.
were of the city.
That's right. And now we see a little bit of that is changing. We see more of the private equity firms coming in, the REIT corporations coming in, and they have a different kind of interest in the city. Not necessarily the same as the families who have owned and lived here for generations.
And it becomes more global, and it becomes
global,
more divorced.
More commoditized, less interest in what exactly happens in New York, although they want New York to succeed. It's not the same investment as it was with the families.
Okay, so how does that make your representation of your members different, if not more difficult?
Yeah, it is more difficult. Many different factors when we go to the bargaining table. Some people at the bargaining table worrying about their shareholders, some worrying about their family interests, and some just looking to make a buck quickly.
Sure.
And we have low end and high end real estate in the city, from A to C, and maybe D and F.
Right.
And we have to try and form a way to deal with all of them, because truth is our power comes from everybody being in the union.
So from a strategic sense, you've got a lot of different games going on at the same time, but essentially, I guess the Fishman effect is that the games may be different, but the style's the same?
Yeah, well, the style.
What's the style?
I think the point is that, in my view is, you don't make it personal. We have a conversation about the issues.
Right.
If you make it personal, you get lost.
Right.
If they're making me angry or I'm making you angry, we can't come to a solution that's good for both.
Well, you're an easygoing guy, it seems.
Well, I would say, talk to my wife about that.
Okay. We're not talking about, that kind of difficulty.
I think I try and make it about the business instead of about the person. But, there are times when you have to get angry and you have to have a fight, and we're totally willing to do that.
When was the last time you had a good fight?
Yeah, we've had good fights, less in the city and more outside the city as we organize new workers.
Okay.
But even here in the city, an individual owner we're having one right now.
Go ahead.
Flatbush Gardens, place in Brooklyn, 80 people locked out. David Bistrister, who owns that project,
Oh, okay.
cut the wages in half, wanted to cut them in half, locked out the workers. The National Labor Relations Board is now looking for an injunction, put them back to work. And that's the kind of fight we have to protect people.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the nature of your political operation? Training. I mean, you've got a reputation now that you can put troops on the ground and you can deliver votes. How do you, rather than operationally, how do you do it? How do you train people to do it? What is it that you do?
You literally bring people in and teach them how to go door to door and talk to
So you explicitly train them in politics. How much time? What's the nature of it?
We try and train as many members as we can. We want thousands of people on the street on election day,
What's
delivering votes.
And how much time? How much training?
Oh,
do you
yeah,
actually
half a
do?
day training. You take members through a half a day training, teach them to talk to a city council member.
Okay.
Talk
These are
about
good
the
skills.
issues. About the issues. Talk about the issues. We want our members to know as much about the issues as we know. In fact, they probably know more than I know.
Yeah, because they're living it.
They're living it every day.
Sure.
And so our members should be out there every day talking to city council members in the communities, the community boards, and talking to just average voters and other members.
Okay.
That's the way we work.
Okay. Let's talk about the state of unions nationally, New York State and New York City. Looking at the world, particularly looking at the state of Wisconsin, both as where you've got your history, both as a real place and a metaphor, unions seem to be shrinking. They're under assault. Sort of the great union leaders aren't there anymore. I mean, there's a gone era. What's the situation with unions nationally? Public unions, private unions. Talk about the general global picture.
Well, I would say, first of all, public unions are under attack. We all know that. We've seen it. You mentioned Wisconsin. I spent 15 years in Wisconsin. Wisconsin, the state of Bob LaFollette and Joe McCarthy.
I know it's and now Scott Walker.
Scott Walker, more in the Joe McCarthy camp.
Sure.
But
My
a
bias
great
is showing
progressive,
here, I guess.
yeah, a
Go
great
ahead.
progressive history and a conservative history. And I would say that the forces of the wealthy and corporate world who have decided that they need to lower wages and lower the standards for working people are taking on public unions in order to break the back of the union movement.
So this is really a macro issue. I mean, you're talking big forces here conflicting with one another.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it this way. There's been a discussion in this country since Reagan for the last 30 years, 35 years,
right.
about America has to be competitive to compete in the world. But when you think of it that way, competitive means for working people, you have to cut your wages because you're going to chase down the cost of a Chinese worker or a Mexican worker or a South American worker. There's no other solution if you only talk about competitiveness. But what makes America great, we have enough money here if we share it differently, if we take on the problem of inequality. And the conversation that's changed since Occupy Wall Street is
talk about that.
income inequality. The solution becomes not being competitive with the lowest paid worker, but sharing money in a different way in this country. And that means unions become part of the solution. Until now, the debate's been about unions being part of the problem. But I would say we have to talk about unions as part of the solution.
How do you convince those who don't believe such things that unions are part of the solution? And then you have to say solution to what?
Well, and that's the point. You have to change the dynamic of what the problem is. The
Okay.
problem's not competitiveness, it's income inequality. That's what's changing America. And I would
Go
say
ahead.
that our members, people coming to this country, think about it now. I would say working people think there's not much of a future for them and their kids. They can't get to the 1%.
So the American
Right.
dream.
American dream is sliding away.
Okay.
And now we're saying we don't want immigrants coming here. And immigrants, this is a debate been going on in our country for years, but immigrants are what built the
Decades,
country.
right.
And we're saying we don't want them to come. We did a study with the Physical Policy Institute that showed in every major city, if there's 25% immigrants, 25% of the economy has been driven by those immigrants. And so we're cutting our own throats. We're saying, don't come here. We don't want people to come here. We need immigration to build the country.
Now you're
That's what makes
making
us
sort of a
strong.
rational economic argument. Why ain't they buying it?
People are afraid. I think it's all built on fear and misrepresentations. Look at the Republican debates and what people are saying. It's kind of crazy what people are saying. This economy can work. We can have jobs here. We have to make it clear what those jobs are going to be. And we have to have good jobs, not just any job, not a $5 an hour job or a $7 an hour job.
How do you do it? We're in favor of it. This is a universal. How do we do it?
Yeah, I'd say you have to have forces that balance out, the corporate forces. So that means unions have to be strengthened. I think the
Who
government
else?
the unions have to be strengthened. The community groups have to be strengthened. We have to change the laws to allow immigrants to be here. We have to have amnesty for the 12 million. And we have to use the government. The government has to play its role, which is helping to ensure that there are good jobs and that working people have a place here.
Okay, talk
So
about.
I would say that one point, which is, the debate, I'd say going back to Reagan, has been, and this is the debate going on now, we should have less government. And there was an article in the New York Times over the weekend about the middle class reliance on programs from the government.
Absolutely.
You saw that article?
Absolutely.
That's what's going on. We need the government to play a real role. We don't need small government, we need good government.
I'm going to sound Marxist from my college days, but there seems to be an element of false consciousness here that there's, people are being diverted from their true interest. Here I am, the elitist, and being moved in a direction that doesn't deal with what might be their fundamental economic interests and social interests. How do you break through that?
I think you have to do serious education. That's what we're doing in our union. We have to talk to people about
Yeah, but
the
you're
fundamentals.
talking to the uncommitteds in a sense, or the committeds, the choir, if you will.
Well,
what
that's
about
the audience.
the opponents?
We
well,
have,
that's
to,
okay.
we have to talk to them too. I talk to the
I
opponents,
agree.
right? But we have to start with the people who are an audience for our message and move out from there.
Okay, let's talk about, if you will, 32BJ agenda, and let's talk about it both in New York City and elsewhere. You're very big on and have argued for infrastructure investment. And I guess the president's belated, in my mind, notion of this infrastructure bank is a step in that direction.
Yeah, I think that's
What do we
right.
do in the city?
Yeah, I think we have to, we've been arguing for and believe it's the right thing to use the pension funds of the public pension funds and the private pension funds to fund infrastructure. That we should invest in our own future. That we should use part of our money, and 32BJ has $1.5 billion fund. That's small.
Right. But it's still real
money. It's
money.
a lot of money.
It's still real money, but it's
small in
small.
relation to the public funds. Public funds have maybe $350 billion.
Right.
That money could be used to invest in projects in New York that would recreate the city, recreate the state, invest in bridges, invest in roads, invest in high-speed rail, and would give a good return to the pension funds. And
Why
we should
not?
Be doing
Why aren't we doing it? Come
that.
on,
It
sounds
takes
like,
will. This has been done.
Why do you need will?
You have to get over the resistance to the idea that the pension fund will it or will it not get a good return.
Oh, okay.
You have to deal with that.
Okay, you got fiduciary responsibility.
Fiduciary responsibility, and
Sure.
then it's a new thing. It's been done for many years. Ontario is doing this. They have 20% of their public funds in infrastructure investment. They own their airport in Toronto. It's a great investment. It pays a good return, but you have to get people used to it. Just like we were talking about people voting against their own interests, this is an idea whose time has come, and we need to invest in our own future.
Okay, talk about immigration. You referred to it a number of times. The argument seems to be it's not only good for your members, many of whom are immigrants, but good for the country. What is, you use the term comprehensive reform. What is comprehensive reform? And is there any possibility that we will have comprehensive immigration reform?
I hope there is. I don't know. We'll see what happens in this
Okay,
election
what are we
this year.
talking about?
We're talking about giving everyone who's here a path to citizenship. With 12 million people who are here, who are not documented, have to give people a path. They've been here, they're participating in the country, they're participating in the economy, building the economy, paying taxes. They should have a path to citizenship. And then we need to figure out how many people we should have come here. And, you know, for me, there's everybody from let's have no borders, let's everybody come in, to let's not have anybody come in. Somewhere in between is the agreement we could reach.
Okay.
But we have to allow people to be here and come here and build the country. That's what makes us strong.
Okay.
On the local level,
Go ahead.
you know, you probably know about the DREAM Act here in the state.
Well, I mean, talk about that. In fact, at this very moment, we've got a lot of activism in New York State around a New York State DREAM Act because the feds ain't going to pass
Right.
one.
The Fed DREAM Act is about giving children access to support to go to college,
Right.
even if they're undocumented.
Yep.
And then a path to citizenship.
Yep.
The city and the state can't give people citizenship, but we can give them the support to go to college, the financial aid. And so the DREAM Act in New York is about giving them access to financial aid. That makes a good American citizen. That's what we want.
Yeah, and
You
in
know, they
fact,
should
you've
get
got
it.
widespread support. You've got the mayor, the governor, you've got lots of folks in favor of it, and you would think that business would be in favor of it. What's the block?
I mean, there are
Is there
businesses.
I mean, what's the block?
I think we can get it done here in the state. There are businesses in favor of it. I think New York can do this, and we should get it done.
And if we do it, then it's possible.
You know, my view these days is that we have to do things in states because the federal government is in paralysis. We should do it in the state the best we can. We should get other states to do it, and then we should go back to the federal government and say, we're doing it, you need to do it.
Okay, let's talk about other issues. Prevailing wage. I mean,
Yep.
there's a piece in the Post that
Right
says
here.
Quinn campaigns for pro-union wage bill. I mean, there's certain, bias inherent in the headline. What's a prevailing wage, and how does it differ from the so-called living wage?
So prevailing wage is very specific. It's about the city paying a competitive wage to people who do the same work as they do in the private sector. In the private sector, we would say our wages, because we represent 90% of the people in the industry, is the market rate.
Right.
That's the rate that is being paid by contractors for cleaning.
Right.
$22.67 an hour. The city shouldn't pay less than that. Our tax dollars shouldn't undercut what's a prevailing wage, a market rate in the private sector. If we allow the city, our tax dollars, we're the people paying these rates, to pay $8 an hour, then we're undercutting the workers who are paying the taxes in the first place. That's the prevailing wage. It's a market rate set in the private sector. The city should have
gets
to
it?
pay it.
And what
Anybody who's working for the city, contracted workers.
So this is direct contract work for the city.
And those workers who are employed by people who've received a subsidy. So for instance, if the city
Right.
gives a $100 million bond or tax exemption, bonding authority or tax exemption for somebody to build, whoever got that $100 million, who's going to make a profit
Sure.
from that money, should also pay workers a decent wage.
And you
The city
think that,
shouldn't pay poverty wages.
now, if Quinn's in favor of it, you're going to get it. So by the end of this session, we're going to have a prevailing wage
We
bill.
hope. Yep.
Okay.
And the city council. That's different than the living wage.
Right.
We're setting a standard rate
Okay.
for workers.
Paid sick leave.
Yep, great thing.
Happen?
I think it might. Yep.
City level?
It happened in Connecticut. They passed 10 days.
Yeah, but this is
Yep.
not Connecticut.
Should be better.
No, it should be better. You think it's going to happen? It's going to go through the council?
Not sure.
Is it going to get vetoed then by the mayor and then overridden? You
Don't
don't
know.
know.
No.
You're hopeful.
Hopeful.
Pensions.
Yep. Big issue. Difficult issue. Pensions, because of the downturn in the market, cost money to fund pensions. But we got to take a step back and say, what are people going to do for retirement in this country? Pensions are essential. One way or another, we have to provide retirement security in the private sector and the public sector. If you think about Social Security now, think about living on just Social Security. People who make our wages,
Go ahead.
retire with an average Social Security check of $1,228 a month. How do you live on that?
No, you can't.
You can barely pay your rent.
You can't. No, you can't.
You got to live
Forget
with your kids when you get old.
They're living with me.
I don't,
No,
I don't
no,
want
no,
to do
no.
that. They're living with you now.
Okay. It's an empty nest, but they're always there. Okay, real quick.
Yeah.
2012 national elections. What
Yeah.
are you seeing?
Yeah. Well, I'm seeing a field of Republicans who I wouldn't want to have as president.
So, I mean,
All over the map, bad for the country, anti-immigrant, anti-worker.
Good
not
for
good
Obama.
for democracy. Good for Obama. You know, we want to see the president
to a
reelected.
certain extent, he might be getting a pass.
I think it's going to be a tough race.
No, it's going to be, no, right.
People,
right.
it's going to be a tough
no,
race.
No,
but
okay, I take it back.
We
I
want
take
to
it
see
back.
him get elected.
I take it back.
I think the president needs our support, and we need to change the Congress. It's not enough to have the
That's
president.
you. I mean, I might share your biases and your values.
No, that's what I'm saying. Not
Okay,
you.
okay.
But we need to build a mandate for change in this country.
Okay. Last question. What do you and the union want in a 2013 mayoral candidate? Without mentioning names. I know you are friends and friendly and have associations with all of them.
Yeah, we love them all.
What do you want? Don't think in names. What do you want in
Yeah.
terms of characteristics?
I would say we want somebody, the Mayor Bloomberg has shown us the city can be managed. We want somebody who can manage the city. But we also want somebody who will think about what's good for every person in this city, for working people, and we want them to have a real program. And, you know, this is a difficult question. What can you do as mayor to change the dynamics in the city? This mayor has tried to fix the education system. We haven't done that. We need to deal with housing. We haven't figured out that. What can a mayor do, and what's their plan for dealing with education for our children, housing for the city, what's going to keep business here and make the
So
whole
these are the
city work?
criteria.
Yep.
And you're going to make an endorsement.
Yeah,
And you're going to
course.
make an endorsement in the primary.
Yeah.
And you're going to certainly make an endorsement in the general.
And we're going to work to make something
Meaning
happen.
what? Tell me what you're going to do.
We're gonna study the issue, first of all. We're gonna hear from them. We want to know how they're going to win and what their program's going to be for the city. We want to evaluate that. We want to talk to our members. We always go out to our members and have a discussion with them. And then we want to find the candidate who we think will lead the city, manage the city, and change the city.
Without mentioning names,
Yeah.
is there a candidate or are there candidates that are meeting this, at least initially meeting your criteria?
Haven't had the conversation yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to have another conversation.
Okay, that'd be
My
good.
thanks to 32BJ President Mike Fishman for being on the show. See you next week on CUNY TV. Hello, I'm Doug Musio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.